welcome to still in July, welcome to the July meeting of the Neath Port Talbot Innovation Exchange. We've been running this forum for a few months now with the support of UK Government Community Renewal Funding and in partnership with Neath Port Talbot Council. And hopefully you agree, we've had lots of interesting discussions, and it's been really insightful and interesting to gather together as businesses in the engineering, manufacturing, technology and innovation sectors across Neath Port Talbot to hear from each other, share what different businesses in the area are up to, understand a bit about the fantastic local firms that we have here on our doorstep, and to hear from support agencies and other partners about what support and funding is available for different things. So we've really valued the input of all the businesses in the room, and really grateful for you giving the time to come along to these meetings and share with colleagues across the county, make those connections. So thank you all for your participation in these meetings. It really is very much appreciated. This will be the final session of this sort before the summer break, and we've got a couple more events lining up for September, and we've got a roundtable event coming up next week, which will just be a few invited guests to share views on a couple of topics about how we shape the forum going forward. But after today's session, we'll be on the summer break and look forward to reconvening in September. So the agenda for this afternoon's session is really, there are two things that we're going to cover. We're going to hear from colleagues in Welsh Government about support for exporting. And we've got Janet Morgan, who's the International Trade Advisor for Welsh Government, joining us to give a short 10-minute presentation about how the Welsh Government can support businesses to expand into international markets. So that will hopefully be a useful presentation for businesses in the room. And then after we've heard from Janet, we'll be moving on to a conversation about shared prosperity funding. So we'll talk more about this as the afternoon goes on, but we've got Lisa Willis from Neath Port Talbot Council talking to us about the council's plans and proposals for shared prosperity funding. Now, this is the UK government's new form of funding that's supposed to be replacing some of what was previously coming from European money. So there's a whole shake-up in how business support and community development and regeneration is supported and funded through the UK government kind of levelling up agenda, and shared prosperity funding is the next stage of that. So Lisa will tell us more about that process, but in particular the purpose of today's meeting is to hear from businesses in the room about what you think the council and the region should be doing to support businesses to grow in South West Wales. So your ideas and input will be gratefully received in the second half of today's session. And we're going to try and do all of that and wrap up by about 2:30. So a packed agenda, hopefully lots of discussion. And as I say, very grateful to you all for being part of today's meeting. But Neath Port Talbot and the Shared Prosperity Fund. So as I said at the top of this event, shared prosperity funding is UK government funding that is coming more or less directly into local authorities from Westminster, and there are arrangements in place for some regional working in that, but basically what it means is that Neath Port Talbot Council and partners are able to start making some really localised decisions about what funding should be spent on to maximise the benefit for businesses and communities right here on our doorstep. And Lisa Willis from Neath Port Talbot Council is going to kick us off with a presentation about the Shared Prosperity Fund, and hopefully that will give us some context. And then Adil is going to share some of his thoughts before we get into a discussion. But please, as Lisa is talking and then as Adil is talking as well, start thinking about what you would do, you know, if you had 30 million or whatever it is to spend on supporting businesses and communities in Neath Port Talbot, what would you do with that money, and particularly around the business support? What sorts of business support are most high impact in your experience, and what would you like to see? So with that said, Lisa, are you here and ready to present? And would you like to share your own slides, or would you like me to share slides on your behalf?
Hi, Dawn. Yes, good afternoon. I'm here. If you could share the slides, Dawn.
Okay, that's no problem.
That'd be great, thank you.
I think I've got those here. Give me a moment. Okay.
Thank you.
You see those? I'll let you take it from here. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Dawn. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lisa Willis from Neath Port Talbot Council. So I'm the lead for the Shared Prosperity Fund in Neath Port Talbot. As Dawn mentioned, it's part of the Levelling Up agenda from UK government, and the Levelling Up white paper was released by UK government in February, and this is one of the funds that will deliver the Levelling Up agenda. Thanks, Dawn. If you could change the slide. Thank you. So the Shared Prosperity Fund, I said, is part of the Levelling Up agenda, and it's a UK-wide fund. It's about £2.6 billion of new funding for local investment up until March 25, part of the Levelling Up agenda. It's a capital and revenue fund, and the local area can determine how much is capital and how much is revenue. There are minimum capital amounts to be spent, and it's empowering each place to identify and build on their own challenges and opportunities at a local level. So it's quite a lot of flexibility in the fund, and I'll go on to talk about the priorities in the next slide. Thanks, Dawn. In terms of allocations, it's not competitive. We've been dealing with the Levelling Up Fund, which is a competitive fund across the UK. The Shared Prosperity Fund is an allocation, so each area, so Neath Port Talbot, we've got about 28 million core Shared Prosperity Fund and about 5 million Multiply, which is an adult numeracy programme, to spend by March 25, and it ramps up over the year. So this year we've got about 4.2 million to spend across projects, and there is potential to carry forward some of that funding if we have a delivery plan in place for the following year. As I said, it's a mixture of capital and revenue, and it's to be spent across a number of priority areas. Just to flag up, it's not just a local authority fund, it's for partners and organisations in the area to deliver projects which are aligned to an investment plan, which I'll describe in a second. Okay, next slide, thank you. There are 3 investment priority areas. There's community in place, which is quite new. Some of the aspects of Shared Prosperity Fund will replace structural funds, but a lot of it is new. And in terms of communities in place, that is real local level delivery in terms of improving our communities, so looking at town centre enhancements, village enhancement, rural areas, preventing crime, looking at tackling antisocial behaviour, investment in green spaces and quality spaces, looking at flooding. So that's the communities place, quite a wide-ranging priority. Then we've got supporting local business, which I focused this session on, looking at creating jobs, encouraging private sector investment and growth in investment and collaboration, and creating new businesses and supporting Indigenous businesses. And then there's people and skills, which is looking at reducing barriers to employment and also upskilling people within the workforce, and also those people who have low-level skills and those furthest from the labour market. So it's quite a wide-ranging fund. And there's also Multiply, which I mentioned, which is coming under our people and skills priority area. And Multiply is an adult numeracy programme, which is very new to Wales. They've run it in England previously, and we are getting to grips with what we're going to be supporting with Multiply. And the next slide, please, Dawn. So I mentioned there are 3 priorities. We have an allocation, so it's not competitive. In order to unlock our allocations, we need to develop an investment plan. So we've been consulting throughout June on our local investment plan. So we developed one for Neath Port Talbot, which we fed into the regional investment plan, and that's been finalised. It was about 6 o'clock yesterday evening. That's been finalised, that regional investment plan. And Swansea Council are the lead for the region for the Shared Prosperity Fund. The investment plan, we didn't start from scratch. We looked at existing documents. So we looked at the corporate plans, we looked at the economic recovery plan, we looked at wellbeing assessments to make sure that we identified challenges and opportunities in Neath Port Talbot, which then fed into the regional level. In terms of the investment plan, it's quite a high level document. They're not looking for projects. Don't feel you've missed out on any call for projects. It's looking at identifying those challenges and those opportunities in the region, and then any which are hooks then in order to develop projects going forward. And it's not the end of the process. So the investment plan will be submitted on the 1st of August. It's going to Neath Port Talbot's cabinet next Thursday. I can share the regional plan with you. So subject to council approval, I can share that after this meeting. And you'll see that it's quite high level, and we're trying to include everything. So I know Julie Davis and the team informed the support and local business chapter of the document, so I will share that. And there are a number of interventions. There's quite about 50 or 60 interventions within the Shared Prosperity Fund, which are areas, high levels of area of work. So we haven't excluded any of those in the regional investment plan. Next slide, please. I mentioned the investment plan. It's a high level document and it's informed by documents I've mentioned previously. So I've covered that slide. Thanks, Dawn. In terms of the support and local business chapter, a number of challenges have been identified, which I'm sure you'll all be familiar with, looking at bridging the productivity gap, looking at supporting startups, looking at decarbonisation, foundational economy, lack of available premises. So I'd say it's a mix of revenue and capital. So these you'll see when I share the document with you after this session, you'll see those are the challenges. And then the next slides will identify the opportunities. So looking at the opportunities within the county borough and the region, and looking at decarbonisation, supporting growth, supporting Indigenous businesses, looking at the visitor economy, supporting, we could have grants, and there's been a number of projects, project areas listed in the plan. So that's feedback from different sessions we attended in terms of growth funds and startup grants, a mixture of capital and revenue. So you'll see those in the document, but as just to caveat they're not projects going forward, that we'll be continuing our dialogue with organisations going forward for that. So the next slide, please. In terms of the application process, people will want to know how they can get the money. It was UK government issued yesterday details on the application type process. It's up to the regions to determine application forms and process and criteria. So we're going to be looking at that over the next month, and we make sure that is as least bureaucratic as possible to ensure that money actually goes to projects, not to bureaucracy. And just to flag out, it's not a direct replacement of European structural funds. It is local activity. There are some regional menus, but there's going to be local delivery, and the project outcomes need to be tangible and visible. In the next few days, we'll be sending out a spreadsheet to people. So our local partnership structure, I sent out to this group, and also people who've contacted us directly, looking to try and scope out what type of projects people are thinking about. And this event, I'll say for the rest of this event, so we can inform that spreadsheet. And then in the autumn, we can't approve any projects yet because UK government need to approve our investment plan. But once we do, we'll have a pipeline of projects that we can look to call forward. Next slide, please. So this is the final slide, which is the timeline. Throughout June and July, we've been holding consultation events. 1st of August is the deadline for the investment plan to be submitted. We're expecting it'll probably be the autumn budget statement that we'll get notification that the investment plan will be approved. So they were supposed to, so throughout August now we'll be looking at developing the process for how we're going to receive projects through. So that's the end of the presentation. I'll hand over to, I can take questions now or hand it over to Adil.
Fab, thank you. Yes, I think the idea is for Adil just to share a few thoughts in relation to that before we get into some discussion. Adil, are you happy to speak for a few minutes now? There we are. He's looking for his unmute. There we go.
Yeah, hi, Dawn. Yeah, thanks for that. I've sent some slides across, so if you could just put them on quickly, but it was just to put a frame of context in terms of what we were looking for feedback from the businesses. We've got the Shared Prosperity Fund obviously there. So when you get the slides up, there you go. Yeah. So this was, first of all, I want to say thank you to all the businesses and the organizations for taking their time out to come and attend today. And this is just to give a bit of a snapshot of the landscape of Neath Port Talbot. Sometimes images speak more than words. So I thought it was quite useful to have this. Next slide, please. Important to note, actually, the geographic coverage for Neath Port Talbot actually ranges from Kenfig all the way down to as far west as Fabian Way, where the new campus is, as far north as Onllwyn, where the Global Rail Centre of Excellence, and covers a range of valley areas, including Ystalyfera, ranging across to Cwm Gors and Ystalyfera, Glencorrig and other areas. Next slide, please. Again, just to frame the context in terms of what we have as assets, we do have a number of key centres of excellence that are based there. This is just a quick snapshot. So this will be useful just to put things in a frame of context and the conversation that we're going to continue. Next slide, please. Again, so today we wanted to focus down to get some feedback from businesses in relation to some of the support potential that they would be seeking or wanting or want to identify. The elements of our action plan in terms of the Neath Port Talbot Council and us maybe considering some business support elements, just for you to be aware, it's sort of in the context of our corporate plan. And these are the other ones, as you can see on there, and it links to our economic development plan, which is to identify and develop actions. Next slide, please. So this is the key focus. So we have the economic recovery plan, and this is where we want to look at sort of strengths, weaknesses, and identify any gaps. The gaps are in relation to four key themes, which are sort of outlined below, as you can see on that slide. The actions have been set around these four key theme areas, and there's an opportunity for us to maybe consider looking at some business support and development going forward. And then from that, from partners, as well as from today's event, hopefully from businesses, we wanted to have feedback in and around those issues to give us an idea of some of the issues they may be facing. Next slide, please. So this is just a bit of further context. So these are the four key sort of theme areas in relation to the business support elements that we want businesses to consider and give us feedback on. Next slide, Dawn. So these were just some questions to be put forward. This is not limited in terms of the narrative, but we wanted to sort of set some questions out to get an idea and your feedback. So, you know, you can see the questions yourself there, and it was just to get feedback from businesses as well as partner organizations in terms of your thoughts of what would be needed going forward in terms of for the local economy and for business support going forward. So that was just to frame some of the conversation today, and these were just some of the suggestions and thoughts that we put forward.
Great, thank you, Adil, and thank you, Lisa, for outlining some of those top level bits of information really about how shared prosperity funding will work. I would be really keen to hear from businesses in the room, so start putting your hands up if you would like to come in. There are obviously some key themes and priority areas and opportunities that have already been identified that are quite broad, so there are opportunities within that to really get into the detail of what those sort of business support projects could look like, or what sort of funding or support actually makes an impact from a business perspective, and where you would like to see investment or support provided. What has worked for you in the past? What do you think companies in Neath Port Talbot need? And what are the key issues? We've obviously talked through some of those things through this forum over the last few months, so we can pick some of those things up. But I'm looking for waving hands or hands up. Anyone would like to come in? So please do introduce yourself and the business that you're from for the purpose of the notes when you come in to start speaking. But Philip, yes, please, let's hear from you.
Hi there, Phil Wallace again, TWI Technology Centre. just a question, do we have a feel for the scale of projects that are likely to be supported? Because I know from our own perspective, to attract a significant research theme to expand within our business, you know, we're never talking tens of thousands. We're usually talking very large scale, sort of probably close to sort of 7 figures. Is that realistic under this fund, or are the programs more likely to be smaller programs to support more businesses?
It's a good question about scale, isn't it? And I'll let Adil answer. Adil.
Just an observation rather than an answer, really. I mean, the shared prosperity fund is a limited budget, obviously, and there are collaborations that are being sought in terms of organisations being able to bid in for that. The funding source isn't necessarily a provision to provide a single element of support for a single entity, let's say. In terms of what your sort of query, Phil, for the TWI, I mean, there are other avenues that can be exploited. You've got the UK Bays and UK Innovate and the other things as well. I think the quantum effect, what we're looking at the Shared Prosperity Fund, is partner organisations working to deliver and to support multiple businesses rather than a single entity.
We've spoken in this group before about one of the challenges is around that kind of sector specific funding and innovation funding. You were talking there, Philip, about sort of developing a research theme. So if that was an opportunity for multiple businesses and partners in the area to collaborate on becoming a sort of region of excellence in a particular theme, perhaps that's something to explore. But there is that need for sector specific growth and development funding, isn't there? Chris.
Hi, Chris Bailey at Specific IKC, Swansea University. Just a quick kind of check, or sort of fact check, I suppose. Is it expected that the shared prosperity funding would be, you talk about partner organisations and kind of being able to touch on multiple business supports. Is it expected like organisations like us, for instance, specific, research and development focus, but with a very strong business support theme and knowledge and expertise in, say, decarbonisation, which is one of the themes? Is there a plan or an expectation that we would be able to bid in for funding with a view to supporting businesses through that?
I think that is the sort of approach that's being welcomed. Lisa, do you want to answer that?
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the Shared Prosperity Fund, as I mentioned, it's 28 million over 3 years, which seems a lot, but that's split over 3 priorities. There is subsidy control we need to bear in mind. So providing funding to one company, we'd need to keep within the subsidy control regime. However, there is discussion about having a support, like a growth scheme or an innovation fund, things like that, which is a mix of capital and revenue, which would be suitable. So in terms of Swansea University, they've been involved through the local partnership. We had a meeting in the middle of June, and all organisations are welcome to bid. And as I say, we'll be circulating a spreadsheet out in the next few days, looking to generate for people to come forward with their ideas of what they feel is a need. And yes, as long as it aligns to the investment plan and the priorities, the interventions of the Shared Prosperity Funds, nothing's going to be ruled out at this stage, I would say. But in terms of the quantum and scale, Phil got a good point in terms of the scale of projects. It's not a direct replacement for European structural funds. In the past, we've had sort of multi-million-pound schemes, but we are trying to, because there is a Wales team for UK government, we are trying to find out what the research, development, innovation funds are post European structural funds, and that's not coming forth at the moment.
Lisa, I think that's part of the issue that we've got is all the promises lead up to Brexit. Obviously, none of them have come to fruition, as we all know. Quick question though on the funding, on the SPF funding. What are the return on investment measures likely to be put in place for whatever projects are funded? Because Always really within TWI, we represent some 700 industrial members from all over the world, not just locally. And one of the things that we look for is that whatever funding mechanisms we're able to attract, we always try to match it then with real industry money from our industrial partners. So we really do provide a very good return on investment. So what sort of measures are going to be put in place, and what expectations are going to be put in place with this SPF in terms of that sort of ROI support?
So the guidance came out yesterday from UK Government in terms of more detail on what projects will look like. There are a list of interventions, and RD&I collaboration, that is one of the interventions. There's no requirement for match funding, but if it's a private sector company, the private sector company would have to provide match funding to benefit. It needs to ensure there's an impact at a local level, so it's job creation, things like that. So that detail is emerging. Phil, it's been quite, we're getting the information same time as the general public. So when it's released on the website, we get the information at the same time. So yeah, but I can keep this group up to date with those things. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so we're sort of keen to understand what businesses feel are the key areas for development of the local economy, and what should be the focus for Neath Port Talbot going forward. Manufacturing and engineering is a obviously key, really important sector in Neath Port Talbot, and has always been. And yeah, any insight or perspectives from colleagues in the room about what you would like to see the local economy look like over the next 5 years, and the real focus for development. When colleagues are talking about decarbonisation, are colleagues in the room kind of embracing that as a growth opportunity, and do you feel like business support to embrace decarbonisation of the manufacturing and engineering sectors? Could Neath Port Talbot lead the way in something around that, or where do you see key areas for development locally? Chris?
Yeah, I think from a perspective of an organisation that's been involved in that for a while, the decarbonisation side of things, that we're very well positioned as a region to be able to capitalise on the expertise of local groups. Between ourselves and others, there's many resources that we can pull on. But I think a critical part there is to actually focus on maybe the skills aspect and the development of the people to learn from those organisations, and being able to take all of that historical learning and turn it into structured education is really important. And there are mechanisms to do that, but I think certainly developing those and coming up with new programs of education for decarbonisation technology, but also just the language and the understanding of the concepts of decarbonisation are really important for the wider public. And I think we have a outreach opportunity for engaging people and empowering people to make decisions across their businesses and also in their personal lives.
Really key. I mean, you've mentioned skills there, and we've talked quite a lot about the real shortage of skills, or the need to recruit staff with the right kinds of skills locally. We've talked about kind of engagement with schools and young people, and making sure young people are making career choices that align with kind of future growth sectors across the county and the region. And I wonder whether there's something about, that there are lots of skills within businesses. Sometimes we talk about skills in terms of, we need to give businesses the skills, but actually there are huge amounts of skills already within businesses. Are there opportunities for things like graduate placements, funded graduate placements, or even, let's not talk about graduates, funded kind of college leaver placements? Could your business take in, I know we talk about apprentices, but could your business take in placements and share the sort of skills that are being developed in the real world within businesses with young people in the region and help them build their careers? Is there some kind of business support that would make that sort of knowledge sharing work? I'm just seeding ideas here, but skills is clearly a key issue, but what support would actually help to address that skills gap within your businesses? Phil, do come in again. I saw you on mute.
I'm mindful. I don't want this to become a two-way. I don't want to.
No.
You know, I'm going to be pretty blunt here, if I may. I mean, the idea of bringing in graduates on work placements and such like. The reality is, for small businesses, that's a real tough thing to do because bringing in a graduate, it brings in with it an awful lot. It ties up an awful lot of resource in terms of health and safety aspects. Sorry, excuse me. In terms of using my expert colleagues to manage them, put a program together and such like. And to be blunt, I can't afford that time, energy, right, to do that off our own backs. Large enterprises, of course they can do it. They've got that order of magnitude of support available. But for small organizations, it's not viable without some sort of financial support to back it. And that's the real world. And I don't want to, we're passionate at TWR about training new engineers, bringing new engineers through, bringing new technicians. I think Zoe just put on the message board now about the non-academic skill sets of things. They're vital to us in our business, actually. That's often overlooked. Having great PhDs and great researchers, that's our business, of course it is. But they're useless without the support of our excellent technical staff, So we'd love to do that, but to be blunt, without some sort of financial support to back it, I just can't do it. And I'm pretty certain I speak for the majority of SMEs, small businesses and SMEs within the environment.
So what could that look like then, Phil? What would enable you to do that? What would that look? What support would enable that?
It's an interesting question, and I don't think I wasn't prepared for that on this meeting now. But that's certainly something I think if we really want to go down that route, that we could pull a meeting together, do a brainstorming event, and I'm more than happy to host that. By the way, at TWI, if you want to organise that, I'd be more than happy to host that event with local businesses to find out what it is how we could put that sort of program together. More than happy to do so, because I'd love to support it, but we have to be realistic in the current climate. That's a tough. As much as we want to do it, can we realistically support it? It's tough.
I think that's a great offer and definitely something to follow up on. And speaking as with a different hat on myself as a technology business in the computer graphics sector, and I was reading a UK government white paper about skills, and it really emphasised that businesses are going to need to train their own people, that we can't rely on the university, that actually with the skills gap, where are the opportunities for businesses to train their own people? But exactly as you say, the time and the resources, the expert members of your team who are so busy delivering your products and services for customers, it's really hard to draw upon them to train up interns or trainees. But so that's where we have, as a technology business that I create, we've been trying to do that, run our own in-house training program, and it's working really well because we're teaching people who haven't been to university, technicians, as you say, the exact skills that they need to do the job, and we're finding that within about 6 months they can become fee earners for us. So within about 6 months they kind of are fledged in terms of being able to actually work on client projects. But how do we make that initial 6-month investment in their skills? So I think there is something about enabling businesses to grow in that way.
What we have found fantastically useful for us for the last 10 years really is taking on graduates who then follow a PhD program of work, but on site with us. So by getting case awards and such like, and grants available to various sources, working then with a very strong academic support that we've got in Wales and around the UK, by PhD students following their research program, but on site with us. At the end of that, they don't only come out with a fantastic academic PhD award, they really are true engineers because the programs of work that they worked on is actually aligned to direct industrial challenges. So it's that sort of blend there. But of course, we've got grant support to run that sort of program. Now, it certainly doesn't pay for all our time and effort, but it's a contribution towards that type of activity. Things like that are really, really useful. Then you've got the apprentice program. You know, we've run apprenticeship schemes very often, and we're going to do more in the near future now again. But the problem with the apprenticeships, for example, is our technicians, as you quite rightly said, within about a sort of 6-month program, they are ready to, as well as continue their development, they're actually ready to start fulfilling some fee-paying activities. But very often, some of the constrictions that come with apprenticeship schemes in terms of what hours they can work, where they can go, etc., that prevents them from doing that. You know, because very often, particularly because we send our engineers on the site activities, the best learning program for those apprentices would be to go on the site around the UK with our engineers, but some of the times that they're constrained to doesn't allow that to happen. So I think we have to become more attuned to the real world of work if we actually want to continue to use these programs to develop the skills and capabilities with what industry really requires.
Yeah, great insights there.
I'll stop now. It's a bit of a rant, but
oh no, I think it's really useful insight, and I think whatever happens under this scheme, we do need to make sure we're working properly with businesses and gaining that sort of insight. So thank you for your contributions there, and I'm hoping others will now come in. But while you're getting ready to put your hands up, Zoe, did you want to come in?
Yeah, Lisa posted in the chat a couple of example anticipated projects, and I've been to a number, or we were involved in a couple of community renewal fund projects, but also I've been out to different engagements that other community renewal fund projects, and lots of them have talked about shared prosperity fund as if it's a bit of a given that they will be able to expand on their projects. Lisa, I don't know if you're still there. I just wondered if those sort of community renewal fund projects get some sort of priority or anything, or is it really start from scratch?
Hi Zoe. In terms of community renewal fund, they were supposed to inform the development of the shared prosperity fund. That was what UK government had planned because of quite a few delays. So in terms of, they won't get priority over shared prosperity fund, but if the projects meet the needs of the investment plan, you know, they will submit an application alongside any of the shared prosperity fund projects, so they won't get priorities, unfortunately. But they were sort of 6-month pilot projects of community renewal funds, so there was no guarantee that they would continue for shared prosperity fund. They were sort of just, you know, discrete 6-month projects.
I'm going to share this slide again just to refresh our memory on the sort of questions that the local authority would really like us to focus on, and see whether colleagues in the room would like to come in response to any of these questions. You know, what about a growth fund to support businesses' capital expenditure investment? What about the kind of property development side of things? We've talked about that in this forum. Is the support available for businesses to develop their premises or expand into new property? What support would enable that? Sector collaboration for supply chain opportunities. What are the sort of, what form could support take from the local authority and other partners that would actually enable your business to develop? What about that kind of local sourcing thing? Is there some support that would enable your business to look at your own supply chains and buy more from businesses on your doorstep? What support would help that? What about some of these new sectors? I mean, we've looked at MOD and offshore wind. What business support would enable your business to grow into those areas? Is there something missing that isn't currently out there that you wish someone could come and help you with? Really keen to unpick some of this. if I can't see your hand, and I know we're just hearing from Chris and Phil. So if there are any new hands that we haven't heard from yet, I'd love to hear from you. But in the absence of that, I'll invite you to come in, Chris.
Sorry about that. It was more of a kind of a supplementary request in terms of your questions there, but from specifics perspective, you know, we would like to know more about what businesses are looking for in terms of the learning about decarbonisation and low carbon approach for their business. So with that question in particular, do any businesses that are here, organisations, have any kind of well, it's hard to say what you don't know, isn't it? But at the same time, is there anything in particular that's evident that there is a missing piece in education or information availability that we could help form something around, or you know, or more broadly in terms of energy? We often have this kind of focus on the. Obviously, you have to have a focus on the financial side of things, but from a decarbonisation and carbon perspective, as in, if carbon reduction is the goal, what piece of education is missing rather than the financial side of things?
Yeah, good questions there. So I'm hoping colleagues will come in response to some of that. In the meantime, Adil, would you like to come in?
Just a comment in relation to what Chris said. Some of the feedback that we've been having from businesses is about the low carbon journey, and having somewhere as a starting point. Whilst there are maybe references where people can look online to look at different technologies, I think the feedback we are getting is that it's a very difficult place to start for SMEs because they need some guidance, and the current provisions aren't there. So whether you term it energy efficiency audits, again, an idea, and it's not the fabric of the building, and that's again a continual misnomer. Businesses operating from a site are not only interested in the actual building, but more so in terms of their operational activity, and how they can manage their maybe supply chains and various other things. So I think the problem some of the businesses are facing at the moment is actually just even starting that journey, getting some advice and direction and guidance. So that's been a common issue that's been coming through from a number of businesses at the moment. The financial is another, but having something to help them to start that consideration, the review, the look of their low carbon sort of journey and what they can do. So that doesn't exist at the moment. A separate thing, some of these points that have been mentioned are just in general. From the economic development perspective, we are looking at maybe extending further development and support. So whether it be continuation of these business forums, but in specific areas. With regards to TWI, there are specific activities around sort of low carbon that could be developed. But what we're hoping that you can come forward with, which is businesses and any organizations, obviously we've got universities here as well, is just feedback and ideas, because obviously at the moment, as Lisa's saying, things are coming out very quickly on a day-by-day basis, and things are being formulated. And from the economic development perspective, we wanted to get as much feedback from yourselves, not limited to these, but this was just a point of reference to sort of get the discussion going.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I know we have got smaller businesses in the room in different sectors. We've got Gareth from Height-Bound in the room. It'd be really great, those of you who are listening, or larger or smaller businesses, just talk about what would help you to grow, or what sort of support you think is needed to encourage other people to start and grow their businesses locally. Do come in if you have any thoughts on questions that have been shared so far. And also, what about this business forum? Has it been useful? This is obviously funded through the Community Renewal Fund. What sorts of discussions and collaborations with businesses in Neath Port Talbot are useful or have been beneficial? Is there merit in business forums, collaborations, subgroups? I'm going to leave a few moments of awkward silence in the hope that some of you who are holding back will come in. No one's an expert in any of this. It's just sharing ideas, really, isn't it? Colleagues from the university, any ideas that you'd like to feed in to Adil and Lisa at this stage? Nick, yes, please do. Are you able to unmute?
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
I mean, Adil knows a bit about this plan. We're looking to relocate our premises from where we are at Neath at the moment to the other side of Port Talbot, still within the NPT area. And one of the key parts of that move is around having direct services connections. These are quite specialist services, so I won't get too much into it because there's confidential parts to it. But at the moment, we have very, very large quantities of inert gases tankered in liquid form to us, which we then convert back to gas and pressurize and that. So we're looking to have a direct gas connection. I wonder whether that is something that would attract some support, because I'm trying to get traction with our group in Sweden to basically allow us to do this and to give us the funds. So I'm trying to get whatever other assistance I can to let that happen. And I wonder whether that's something that there would be interest from NPT in helping us with. So this is decarbonisation in that at the moment we have, I think I worked it out, it's about 20,000 road miles of tankers coming to this site, heavy goods vehicles, which don't come very fast, it's a lot of journeys. So we're using an awful lot of power. I mean, I don't need to hide behind it. The connection that we want is with BOC at Margam, very, very large industrial gas plant. Actually, they told me that they consume more power than the city of Bristol. So,
Wow.
so a significant part of that power is liquefying gases, taking gases down to about -200 degrees, liquefies, they put it in a tanker, send it down the road to somebody. So if we could have our direct connection, we wouldn't have to liquefy our gas anymore. And that'd be an enormous energy saving, both for them and then for us, because then we need to convert it back into gas again.
And
So,
do you think those are the sorts of investments that would enable other business that, that benefit more than one company, Nick? Are they the kinds of things that would attract, those sort of infrastructure projects that attract other businesses to set up and locate in key areas?
Oh, I mean, only if they were to relocate literally next door as well. It's, the economics are there for us because we use an awful lot of inert gas. It wouldn't be worth somebody use a small amount to go down there and relocate. But if there were a gas connection that could be used by others, then certainly that would be a possibility.
Yeah, and as you say, key for the sort of decarbonisation thing.
Yeah.
Great.
But it's a bit like Phil said. It's not a tuppenny halfpenny sort of. It's a big deal. It's quite a big investment. Just that gas connection part. Never mind relocating a factory down there as well.
Yeah, and are there business support needs around that relocation and the property side of things, or do you have that covered? And is that covered by Welsh Development
We've already
Bank?
got that covered with Welsh Government, the property development part, but not the specialist services connections.
Interesting. Yeah, great insight there. Thanks.
It's not only the gas connection, but also the electricity connection is with a biomass plant that's close to that site as well.
Yeah, okay. Interesting infrastructure requirements. I'm sure Adil will respond on that point, but while we're waiting for that, Dawn from Astute, would you like to feed in some thoughts or questions?
Yeah, just an observation really. Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah. Great.
Just an observation really. I haven't been part of this forum until today, and it's really useful for me to hear other people's perspectives. We've worked over the years with different businesses in the area, seeking to help resolve research problems, and it's really helpful to get other views, as I say, different perspectives. I think for us, we're still keen to be able to work with businesses, but our difficulty is this pot of money sort of, it's more difficult to see how we can make those partnerships. And we're keen to do whatever we can to make that possible.
Thanks for being here. And it is absolutely about kind of hearing the voices of real businesses, or, as Philip was saying, that kind of the real world, really. So thanks for participating. Adil.
Oh, hi.
Adil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, John. So trying to unmute. Just going back to what Nick said. So we understand there's a lot of focus around the shared prosperity fund, but as I said, it's as Lisa's mentioned, it's a limited budget, which each local authority has, and there are varying priorities, obviously. Now, in terms of what Nick mentioned in Sandford, there is a specific fund that potentially that could be considered. I think I've sent you some details on this before, but it's the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund. So that total fund is 315 million, which is applicable across England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So those sort of programs are far greater in their quantum, and that's just one of maybe a dozen other programs that are available to businesses. So there's a balance, I suppose, in terms of looking at the leverage of what the Shared Prosperity Fund can deliver, but also maximising the opportunity of UK government direct funding, which is coming out and it's available to every single business across the UK. So with regards to what you were saying there, that actually the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund would be the key element, but that also links up to the Neath Port Talbot Clean Growth Hub cluster work that we are doing. And we're going to be commissioning a second piece, which would tie into that, and we'll have some further conversations with yourselves and Nick in relation to that as well. But I understand where you're coming from in terms of the infrastructure requirements, but that specific funding is to actually look at high energy use industrial sort of areas or businesses to cut their energy bills and carbon emissions through investing in energy efficiency and low carbon technologies. So that fund is clearly an opportunity. And it could be packaged within a collaboration of an area. So we need to have some further discussions, but I'm hoping that you would be engaging and be part of the piece of work that we're doing, which is a Clean Growth Hub 2, which is specifically to focus on projects that are commercially ready to go and then to align them to funding. But when I say funding, UK government funding, because the funding available across the UK is far more substantial than the limited allocation of the 28 million under the Shared Prosperity Fund. So I've just mentioned one fund there, which is 315 million. There are another 6 funds available, which go across sort of hydrogen and other areas. And there are further funds that come across in terms of agri-tech as well. So, whilst we've got the challenge of maximizing the shared prosperity impact, we can't lose sight of the fact that there are other UK government funding streams available, which we entities in Wales and organizations must and should be looking at. Some of the informal feedback I've been getting is we're at, we use the term reference with the bottom of the league in receiving UK innovate funding, bottom of the league of claiming R&D tax credits. Surely that can't be right for a nation of our size, of our capabilities, of our fantastic abilities and achievements that we've done. So, we need to focus on some of the other elements as well. So the Shared Prosperity Fund is there for a purpose, but, there are much larger schemes there and available ready for entities to sort of apply into.
Yeah, good point. I mean, the scale of those funds just seems to dwarf what we're talking about here with the shared prosperity funding. So worth maximising how businesses and collaborations in the area are bidding in for some of those broader sector specific or thematic funds. Salima from East.
Oh, thank you, Dawn. Hi, everybody. So I'm Salima from East, and we are the Ethnic Minorities and Youth Support Team. So we work across Wales, including Neath Port Talbot area, obviously. I just wanted to say, Dawn, that our ESF funding, which came to an end recently, was to upskill people from minority ethnic backgrounds. So people who needed help with employability, whether that was mock interviews or helping them with placements or actual interview skills, any kind of help they needed to upskill themselves with employability. So the gap is there now, obviously. With the COVID situation, the disparities in unemployment between mainstream white population and the minority ethnic communities has grown, and it is really disheartening to see that funding has been pulled and nothing has replaced it. So people are coming to us in East and saying, you know, can you help us? We need employability help. This is what we were used to. There was an excellent service that was being run, but there's nothing to replace it. And we haven't got capacity as much as we would love to replace that from what we've got already. So with the funds that are going to be available, is there going to be sort of much of it available to specifically people who are at a disadvantage already, if you like? So people from minority ethnic backgrounds, or the young people maybe, or what used to be called the needs. Will there be specific funds for those areas, do you think?
Yeah, one of the really, you know, of the three big themes, people and skills is one of those three big themes, and a lot of that surely needs to be around employability skills and getting people ready to get into work. And as you say, there are specific communities of interest or specific people with needs that are above and beyond, and as you say, closing that gap. So well done for raising that, and hopefully colleagues in the room are making a real note of the need to design specialist support for key demographics. Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dawn, just to say that under the people and skills, as you rightly say, they will be supporting employability programs and also young people. So originally they had excluded young people from, so under 16s from that, so the NEETs from the people and skills, but the local governments in Wales lobbied UK government, and they were in listening mode, and they actually changed the criteria for Wales, so we can support under 16s as part of the people and skills programs for prevention of becoming NEET. In terms of, we need to ensure we don't duplicate Welsh Government employability programs. So there's, I know they've got the Community for Work program, so we need to be careful we don't duplicate that. We need to add value, but that is something that's identified in the investment plan in terms of barriers to work and also employability programs. So Seema, we'll keep in touch with people across this forum and other forum, and there will be calls for projects. We need to emphasize though, we can't just continue ESF projects. It needs to be a need and demand, and I know there is, but just to clarify to everybody, we can't just say that any ERDF project or any ESF project will roll forward automatically into SPF.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Lisa. We understand that. We do understand that at East, but it's just because we know the need is there. And just to give you a figure, Black youth unemployment was at 40% during COVID. 40%, it's just huge, isn't it? So the need is absolutely there, and we need the approach to be targeted. So targeted towards the minority ethnic communities, because the needs are different, language needs, cultural needs. We need that understanding of how the minority ethnic needs are different to the mainstream needs, which is what we have at East. So just to bring that to your attention, but thank you.
And, just to tie that into some of the earlier conversations, the more of this kind of employability support that can be brought into the real world of employers and businesses is what I would advocate for. What support is there for businesses that are willing to directly offer placements or mock interviews or training? That the funding always goes to bodies, doesn't it, rather than to businesses to actually share the skills, the knowledge, the confidence, the industry specific stuff with young people or people across our region. How are we actually enabling and empowering businesses to share their skills and resources and support, rather than always the money going to agencies and organizations, which I appreciate? We need both. Philip.
I mean, I mentioned earlier on about the return on investment. I mean, this is part of it, isn't it? If we're fortunate enough to win a grant support for a large scale scheme, then part of that return on investment, as you quite rightly said, it should be jobs created. It should be identifying how we're utilizing the local supply chain, but it also sort of look, how do we feed back into the local schools and colleges? Are we interacting with local community to provide support such as mock interviews and such like? And the trouble is, I think when we use the term return on investment, I'm not sure if people fully identify and fully understand what we mean by that. It's the whole remit of the return on investment, not just how many jobs you've actually created. It's how much of the local community you've been able to support and upskill during that program as well. And I think sometimes we're a little bit blinkered on how we identify these programs of work. The other thing I would say, and then I'll shut up, I promise, because I know I'm preaching a bit too much. Dawn, you asked about the value of these forums and these support webinars. The problem I always have with it is it's always, I'm one of the voices that's always speaking, as are the guys from Specific, as are the guys from Astute. All right. And what I always say, and I'll continue to say it until it changes, we're not getting enough local businesses participating in these events. And I'm not 100% sure why that is, whether they're not aware of them, whether they find that when they come into these programs, they're too complicated for small businesses to be able to participate within them. And I think we really, particularly in Wales, where we're built up of a lot of small businesses, we really need to make these programs much easier to access and actually put it in a language that small local businesses can understand more easily. It's fine for me. I've got a headquarters based in Cambridge. I can call upon brilliant experts to explain the narrative to me. But if you're a small local business based in Port Talbot or Baglan or whatever, you don't have that support. So I really think we need to find a way to translate the opportunity of the SPF down onto the shop floor level, if you want. And I think we need to, and I'm not clever enough to explain how we can do that, but I think I'm wise enough to understand we need to do that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, how do we make sure that all the small businesses who maybe don't see themselves as high growth or high tech, but they're on the ground creating a few jobs and, you know, embedded within communities, how do we bring them into conversations? Because from my own experience of just being involved in this forum over the last 6 months, as a business owner, it's opened my eyes to like, oh, perhaps we should be thinking about growth. And oh yeah, perhaps we should be thinking about innovation. And I've got a meeting this afternoon with Development Bank of Wales, which I would say is a direct outcome of just being involved in these conversations, even if I haven't thought this is massively relevant to my business. So it is beneficial, but it's always the same faces and the same voices. And there are hundreds of businesses, if not thousands, that we need to reach out to.
If I may, one other thing, these forums are great. These remote forums are fantastic. But I honestly believe also we need to get back to face-to-face meetings, face-to-face conferences, face-to-face events. Because actually, when you're having a bacon roll or a cup of coffee, standing next to somebody, that's actually when you start networking and you're able to start a real conversation rather than a presentation type environment like this.
Yes, a few weeks ago in Swansea, we hosted something we called it the Green Recovery Business Conference, and we had around 80 or 100 local businesses come along. We really worked hard to make sure it wasn't just the same old faces, but it was in person in the Bramwyn Hall. And as much as it was about talking about the green recovery and decarbonisation, it was networking. So it's those sorts of opportunities. Dawn from Astute.
Yeah, if I can just make a plug for another source of funding, which is A4I funding. Round 8 will come out in August. The reason I mention that is Astute's always had a horrible long application form that's developed over the years, but A4I funding is really helpful for businesses that have got a particular problem with a product. And they can do just a short video, and that application procedure is very much simpler. So that might be something that people might be interested to look at.
Good to hear. Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, well, we're up at 2:30, which is our allotted time, and I think it would be great to keep thinking about this question and keep feeding ideas and perspectives into Lisa and to Adil in Neath Port Talbot Council, because I know that this is very much a live topic, and the challenge is to design business support projects and programs together with partners that really create that step change that's needed. And we all know that if we always do what we've always done, then we're always going to get the same results as we've always had. So we really have to think, I butchered that quote, apologies, but we really have to think differently, don't we? And see what Neath Port Talbot could do differently to create that step change in opportunities for young people across the county, in businesses coming here, staying here, setting up here, growing here. The social value return on investment, which is what Phil was talking about there. You know, what are the multiplier effects when we make those investments or those business support that spend? How do we get the real social value as well as the economic and jobs value out of that? Loads of really exciting opportunities coming up, and as Adil says, loads of missed opportunities actually in terms of being at the bottom of the league for innovation funding and for R&D tax credits. So there's lots on the table that we need to capitalize on and leverage for the benefit of the local economy and communities over the next few years. And we'll look forward to your support and collaboration in seeing how we can make that happen. And collaboration is the key word, isn't it? How we can keep talking and work together to make all of this stuff a reality. I think that's it for today's discussion. We'll reconvene in September. In the meantime, have a fantastic summer. Please do keep feeding ideas into us. The offer is there. We'd love to interview businesses in the room for our podcast. And Helen Bowden, my colleague, is really keen to meet with you and record podcast episodes so we can share some of your stories and successes with the wider community. Do keep in touch with us, but in the meantime, have a great summer. Thank you for your input, and we'll reconvene in September. All right, bye for now. Thank you all. Thanks very much.